Hello, welcome to your in-depth horoscope forecast for week commencing the 4th of November for the Sun or the Ascendant. If you've yet to subscribe to my channel, I'd be honoured if you did so now. Please click or tap on the bell notification symbol. This week sees three groupings of energies. There's still the Sun and Mercury, which is tracking backwards in the sign of Scorpio, which is about transformations. We also have Venus and Jupiter in the much more expansive and optimistic Sagittarius. And finally, Saturn and Pluto in the much more orthodox Capricorn. Now, of course, all these influences are going to be interacting with one another. In fact, on the first day, the Sun in Scorpio forges a right angle with the Moon in Aquarius. If there is a situation that you're involved with where there does seem to be an awful lot of politics swirling around, some of it may not be particularly obvious, but you can pick a sense of it up through the prism of Scorpio's energy, which helps us to really sense what's going on beneath the surface. And of course, with Mercury retracing its steps, if we are trying to collaborate or cooperate with anyone who's withholding information, not paying us money that's due, or there are glitches and problems that we don't seem to have any direct control over, then that can be frustrating. But actually, this is a week where Mars and Pluto, so Mars in Libra, is actually still in its right angle with Pluto for pretty well the whole of the week. So it's one of those weeks, if we get so frustrated that we try to push the pace and really drive a solution through, rather than stay much more self-contained, it actually probably could be counterproductive. Because in the second half of this week, ironically, Mars forges a brilliant angle to Jupiter. So it could be that if we can just find the enthusiasm, the passion, and the persuasion in a kind of good way, other people can actually be very responsive. And also the Sun forges a very stabilizing link to Saturn, which means that where we've put the hard work in, the application, and also the perspiration, we could see some very solid rewards starting to show themselves. Now, of course, with Mercury retrograde, there could be those delays. Not everything may go quite at the pace we want, but also Mercury retrograde must be seen as a positive thing sometimes if it helps us to rethink what isn't working very well. So that could be an option this week. So if there is a relationship, even with a financial institution where you don't really feel you're getting the best deal, change it. That could be a positive thing you can do with Mercury retrograde. And also from Friday to Sunday, Mercury, despite the retrograde, forges a beautiful link with Pluto. If this rings a bell, it's because of the retrograde that it's being repeated. But this helps us to penetrate to the core of what's really useful. And I do feel it can be a real help to offset the more difficult energies that Mercury retrograde can bring. The Sun's also forging a beautiful link with Neptune in the second half of this week, and finding the time, the energy or the resources to help someone who's less fortunate can be something that gives us a big lift. There is one other influence I want to tell you about this week that's a bit more obtuse but very important. It does involve Venus, which is now in the very free-spirited Sagittarius, but Venus is in a quincunx with Uranus. If you remember, Mars went through this recently. Now, Venus in Sagittarius is very much about being more in the moment. It's about being experimental, but it's also about the truth. Whereas Uranus in Taurus, and Uranus can be very impulsive, just suggests that when it comes to something we desire, whether it's a big ticket item, or if we're planning our Christmas budget, or if we're wanting to treat someone we really like, it is going to be important to try to contain our enthusiasm and not splash out rather more than we can really afford. So it could lead to a little bit of impulsiveness around a relationship or expenditure. Your specific forecast, Libra, shows a quarter moon on the first day in your sister air sign of Aquarius. Could see you pushed, or tempted at least, to be super generous this week to the people you care about. Maybe there's a big ticket item that you spotted for someone as a Christmas gift that could prove to be hugely tempting. One of the things about the second fifth house angle is that something we desire, the fifth house, could be linked to something material, the second house. But then if you do feel like this, then it may be worth just tuning out why you might feel that you need some kind of lift. But of course, if you can afford it, then why not? This week also sees the sun in your second house of resources forging a very stable link to Saturn in your fourth house. Now, obviously, Saturn has been quite a difficult and trying influence for you over the last couple of years. But this angle can be very constructive. So if you're trying to build something up, whether it's an internal structure within yourself in terms of your thinking, or managing those resources a bit more astutely, or changing something linked to a property, it has a great chance of success. There's also a fabulous link this week between Mars in your sign and Jupiter. Now, as much as Mars and Saturn is all about being steady and progressive in a kind of thorough and step-by-step way, Mars and Jupiter linking together is very much more to do with being in the moment and being a bit more instinctive. Because Libras, remember I have the ascendant as well, like to carefully weigh things up. This is pushing you and me to just go for it a little bit more. So despite that quarter moon saying be cautious about going for it, I think this influence could see something develop, but it may be more linked to a creative strand or a social one, or perhaps even a new mode of transport you could be considering. In the second half of this week, also the sun forges a beautiful link with Neptune. If you're someone who is quite sacrificing in your work or helps people who are less fortunate, this is a lovely angle and can bring out your best qualities. It is true that your ruler Venus is in a more trying and testing quincunx this week. Now, Venus is in a delightful zone on its own, along with Jupiter, so it's giving you extra confidence about your ideas, but its angle with Uranus, which is the 8th house for you, is just suggesting that when it comes to your romantic situation, there could be someone that you're really drawn to who sparks your imagination, but just think if you really have got similar values, which is what the 3rd house really represents, because there may be something a bit different or unusual about this person that you do find actually quite captivating. Thank you so much for joining me for your video. If you'd like to know what 2020 would hold for you beyond your zodiac sign, based on your time, date and place of birth, please see the link beneath this video. If you order your forecast now, you can get 30% off and the rest of 2019 free. But for now, good luck and goodbye.